Greetings all, and welcome to a presentation on the AMD Ryzen 7 2700X CPU. This slideshow was made by DeLozier, and I am your narrator, Joshua Bedran. So without any further ado, let's jump right in. Alright, so first and foremost, the AMD Ryzen 7 2700X is a 3.7 GHz 8-core processor. It was designed with gamers and content creators in mind. It launched almost 3 years ago, on April 19, 2018, and currently retails on Amazon.com for about $435. It has over 13,000 reviews, 89% of which are 5-star ratings, which speaks volumes about just how good this CPU processor is. Its main competitor is the Intel Core i7-8700K, which was released around 6 months later than the Ryzen 7. And in terms of performance, it actually outshines the Intel Core in every aspect. So it just dominates in terms of its release. Additionally, one of its main draws is its 8-core processor. And this is what really gave it its edge over Intel. We first look toward one of the main features of the AMD Ryzen 7 2700X, which is its 8-core processor. Having 8 cores means that the CPU has access to 8 separate processing units, each of which is capable of executing its own set of instructions, allowing for the possibility of multi-threading. This particular CPU is capable of handling up to 16 simultaneous threads due to its 8 cores. This allows the Ryzen 2700X to increase its throughput by a massive margin and drastically improves its performance. For their second generation of processors, AMD decided to move to a new chipset architecture called Zen+. This new chipset architecture features 12 nanometer components, but while keeping the same total chip size from the previous chipset. This means that the chip had more what they called dark silicon between parts. This extra dark silicon allowed for an increase in the instructions per cycle, increasing performance by about 10%, and a decrease in power consumption. Furthermore, the AMD Ryzen 2700X also features over 20 megabytes of space for its 3 caches, L1, L2, and L3. L1 and L2 are the generic caches used by most cores to hold extra data and processes for pipelining. L3 is an extra large cache that is used in assisting L1 and L2 in pipelining. This allows for an even more streamlined process and even more precise. This makes the CPU capable of handling even more processes. Also, the AMD Ryzen 7 2700X is an unlocked processor. This means that it is capable of overclocking. So it can reach speeds above its base clock rate that it is not necessarily designed for short bursts. During these short bursts, it's going to consume more power and generate more heat, so it cannot overclock continuously, but it does allow it to reach even higher processing speeds. The main 3 reviews for the Ryzen 7 2700X. Each of them gave the processor pretty sparkling reviews. The first review that we looked at was from Leo Wallach with Kit Guru Tech. And his take on it was that it was a very solid choice compared to its main competitor with Intel, in that it pretty much offered better everything in terms of performance, with some slight drawbacks when it came to some gaming performance, losing by about 1 to 2 frames per second on average. Though he does mention that at this point, while the Ryzen 2700X did outperform the Intel counterpart, the outperformance wasn't actually by so much that it was like a no competition kind of deal. It was more like, either way you go, you get a very good deal for your money, but if you want to know who the winner is, Ryzen 2700X was the distinct winner. Additionally, some of the other reviewers used a benchmark program called Cinemark to compare the two competitors, and still found that the 2700X scored better than the Intel counterpart. Now, the other reviews more or less said the same thing, mentioning that the Ryzen 2700X was also a little bit more economical because it came with its own cooler, a fairly high-end cooler at that, for a lower price, which its opponent did not come with. So overall, the Ryzen 2700X is definitely, on paper, superior, but they're pretty close. They're pretty neck and neck. Another review we looked at was from Kevin Lee from TechRadar. He very much liked the Ryzen 2700X. He pretty much said there was nothing at all wrong with it, and that it was a total victory over the i7 8700K. But once again, only on paper, it seems. The more in practice it is, the more it seems like they're just so similar that it didn't really matter. Another review from Andrew Leibman with PC Mag. He pretty much says the same thing as our first reviewer, in that it was pretty much better and it just cost less. So you got more for your money. Lastly, we're going to talk very briefly, just mention our references. These are the places that we got our information from. These is where you can find the reviews if you'd like to see some of these reviews, as well as any information we got. So there you go. If you want to do some research on your own and check our sources, this is where you do it. Thank you.